In this week's Sunday Sit-Down, I'm going to talk about my favorite games from 10 Hall of Fame game designers. Now, as far as I know, there actually is not a Hall of Fame of tabletop game designers. Perhaps there will be someday. But I kind of created this concept. Someone recently asked me about this. They said, okay, if there were a Hall of Fame of game designers, who do you think would be on it? Who would be the first 10 people that would be on this list? So this list is very subjective. And the guidelines I used, and it's actually tough to make because I admire and love so many game designers. And so I don't like the idea that I'm excluding like the majority of people from this list. This isn't meant to exclude people. This is just meant to highlight 10 designers who I think have a significant variety of work in their portfolio, in their published portfolio. Designers who have had success for whether it's in terms of rankings or sales or just an impact on the game design world, the game and the game playing world, over, I estimated around 10 games. So 10 games that had a significant impact. And game designers that have some amount of longevity. So like I've tried to focus on game designers who have been around for at least a little while. It doesn't mean that they can't be young, but just that they've designed a number of successful games that continue to be played today and have an impact today, even though they've been doing it for a while. Okay, so those were my rough guidelines. Before I start with the 10 people that I chose and the games that my favorite game from each of those people, I want to mention a few people that I left off the list, even though it was really close. Like I honestly, I wanted these people to be on this list, but it didn't. I just didn't think it quite made sense based on those restrictions, based on those guidelines. So they are Ignacio Trebek of Portal Games, probably best known for Robinson Crusoe. Ryan Lockett from Red Raven Games. I think if I filmed this video in maybe 3 years down the road, I think Ryan would be on the list. Not that he doesn't deserve to be on the list today, but just because maybe he needs a few more games to get here. But man, he's good, and he has such a variety of works of game designs and awesome mechanisms. So he would be on here quite soon. And Bruno Cathala, who I really admire as a designer. I think he has some great works, but when I was looking at his works, it seemed like he had a few big hits, but not quite to like the 8 to 10 range of games that had a significant impact that I'm looking for. Anyway, so let me focus on the 10. And I'll start off with, and actually one other caveat, this list is not my list of favorite game designers. On that list, there are really only 3, and those 3 are on this list by happenstance. But the list is the guidelines that I previously mentioned. They're not necessarily my favorite, even though I have at least one game that I really admire from each of these designers. So the first 3 I'll mention are my 3 favorite designers. So I'll start out with that. Actually, there was one other guideline I forgot. I mentioned the variety, but I think the variety is a key part of this because there are some designers who have had a huge amount of success. I'll throw out Alan Moon, for example. Alan Moon has had a huge amount of success for Ticket to Ride and a few other games, but mainly Ticket to Ride. And I think he deserves to be acclaimed for that game, but I didn't think he maybe belonged on the Hall of Fame list that encompasses designers who have designed a great variety of games. Matt Leacock is another one that came to mind. And Matt Leacock does stretch his design skills quite a bit. He's a very, very talented designer. But he's really hit that cooperative game niche and almost kind of focused on that pandemic engine. Like that's kind of the engine that has driven many of his games. So that's why those guys aren't on here, even though that they deserve the recognition, same level of recognition as any of these other designers, in my opinion. Anyway, finally, the list. So the first 3 are my favorite designers, and I think they deserve to be on this list. The first is Uwe Rosenberg. Uwe Rosenberg, I won't go into too many details with any of these designers. I'll just say who they are. You can look up and see who they are. You probably know who they are. Uwe Rosenberg, I think, is fantastic. I've had the pleasure of working with him just a tiny bit on More Visitors, a viticulture expansion that we published. But he was actually the hardest person on this list to choose one game that's my favorite because I love Patchwork. It's one of my favorite two-player games, but given Uwe's background, I wanted to pick something a little meatier. And even then I had a tough choice because there's Aura at Labora, which I really love, huge inspiration for Charterstone, and A Feast for Odin, which these days I just can't get enough of. Like right now, if I chose a game of his to play, like right now today, in fact, I would love it if I got to play it today, A Feast for Odin would be that choice. But man, it's tough to choose between those two. I'm going to go with Aura at Labora. I think I would say that is my favorite game from Uwe Rosenberg. I'll go with it. That's a tough choice, though. Very tough choice. The next guy, and these are really no particular order, just so happens that the first three are my three favorite designers. The next one is Rob Daviau. Rob used to work at Hasbro, so he designed a bunch of games that probably don't even have his name on the box at Hasbro. And in fact, my favorite game that I'll show in a second of his doesn't have his name on the box, even though he was the designer. But he is most known for Legacy, but he's also just designed a great variety of games in many different ways. And but Legacy puts him on the list. And my favorite game experience from Rob Daviau was playing Risk Legacy. I think I played it in 2014. And it opened up my eyes as a designer and as a player, and it was just it's one of the best gaming experiences of my life. I absolutely loved Risk Legacy, so that's going to be my game for Rob Daviau. The next guy is actually somewhat relatively new. He might have fallen into that same category as Ryan Lockett, but I had to put him on the list because he's reached so many levels, such high level of acclaim in such a short amount of time, and that is Alexander Pfister. Alexander Pfister, I think he's won the Spiel des Jahres twice now. I think for Room Service, and I'm pretty sure the other one was for Isle of Skye, which is one of my favorite games. It's been on my favorite game, my top 10 favorite game list for quite some time now. I absolutely adore this game. So at some point in the near future, I'm going to do a list of top 10 I Cut You Choose games. I Cut You Choose is one of my favorite game mechanisms. And Castles of Mad King Ludwig and Isle of Skye are constantly competing to be at the top of that list. Ted Alspach, actually, who designed Mad King Ludwig, he's very close to being on a list like this as well. He's awesome. But Isle of Skye from Alexander Pfister is my favorite game from him. So now we're getting into the part of the list where these are designers that aren't necessarily among my top 3 favorites, but they are people that I think absolutely deserve to be in a top 10 Hall of Fame list of game designers. One of them is Riener Kniezia. I might be mispronouncing his name. Riener Kniezia. He's an acclaimed Euro game designer, perhaps not always known for incorporating theme into his games, but he's great with auction mechanisms, and that's his favorite game of mine is Ra. I absolutely love Ra. I think it's my favorite auction game, although a few others have competed for it. But Ra is a wonderful game. I think he also designed Medici. Let me look that up to see, because I really, really like Medici too. It was one of the games that I played on my iPad for quite some time before finally playing it in person. Yep, he designed Medici. He's an amazing designer, especially with these auction games. The next one, I only actually have one of these other games. I'll save that one for a second. The next one is Eric Lang. While there are a bunch of like Euro game designers on this list, I think Eric is one who really brings that Amerithrash sensibilities or lack of sensibilities into this list. He has designed a great variety of games that have really a lot of innovative and new game mechanisms. And while he has done these big epic miniature games, he's also done some smaller games. So I really like the scope of his work. My favorite game of Eric Lang's is Blood Rage. I'm not very good at Blood Rage, but I love the drafting. I love the way the battles work in the game. I really, really like Blood Rage. The next guy on my list is Antwon Bauza. Perhaps most known for Hanabi, but also very well known for Seven Wonders. My favorite game of his in particular, though, is Seven Wonders Duel. And I think it's amazing that he was able, and he actually designed this with Bruno Cathala, who I mentioned earlier. This game is just amazing, and I think it shows an immense amount of Hall of Fame game design skill if you can go from a Seven Wonders game that can play 7 players, even 8 with one of the expansions, to designing a 2-player game. Very different design skills there, very different experiences. Pretty incredible from Antwon Bauza. The next guy on the list is Vlaada Chvátil. I've actually played a lot of Vlaada games, and I haven't even necessarily connected with all of them in the ways that I hoped. But I really admired all of his designs, and it amazes me, of anyone on this list, it amazes me, the breadth of his designs is just incredible. Like, he has Through the Ages, he has Mage Knight, he has like Dungeon Pets and Dungeon Lords, and then he has Codenames. All of these games are so different. Oh, and he has Galaxy Trucker. This guy, he would probably be at the top of the Hall of Fame list, given the breadth of his game designs. All the way down to Codenames. Super streamlined, super simple, but super, super clever. Even down to the words that he chose for Codenames. And Codenames is my choice for this list. I still need to play Codenames Duo or Duel, whatever the 2-player, or like the team variant. No, not the team variant, the cooperative variant. I haven't played that yet, but I played the core Codenames game. The next guy, I have another kind of a Amerithrash designer on here, Cory Kaneesha. He's designed these heavy thematic games, many of which were published, maybe even all of which, from Fantasy Flight Games. And another guy that kind of close to this that almost made the list was Kevin Wilson, but I thought Cory Kaneesha, maybe the differences between his games was a little bit bigger. And so I choose Star Wars Rebellion for Cory Kaneesha. The mechanisms in this game are brilliant. I think they harken back to maybe a game designed by Christian Peterson. You can correct me in the comments. It might have been the what was the game? Well, no, not him. It might have. There's a what is the game? It's the Lord of the Rings game. Maybe Battle of the Five Armies. Anyway, there might be another game that kind of has some of these mechanisms, but Star Wars Rebellion, I think, is just a brilliantly designed game. Really well done from Cory Kaneesha. That's my pick for him. We have 2 more left. I'll end with a big one, and before I get to him, I'll go with Martin Wallace. I've only recently played Brass from Martin Wallace, and very recently I played the new edition of London. I've heard that I should play A Study in Emerald, and I have played A Few Acres of Snow. But he's one that has game designs that are all over the place. Some are not as successful as others, but he definitely has, in the category of like having 8 to 10 games that have made a significant impact on the game industry in terms of sales and success and ratings, Martin Wallace has to be on this list. My pick for him is London 2nd Edition, which I recently played at Geekway and had a blast with. It was a huge surprise for me. It was completely off my radar before then, but I really, really enjoyed that play of London 2nd Edition from Martin Wallace. And finally, I will end with a gaming giant, a game design giant, who may not even, let me see how many games he has. I'll have to look it up. So this guy is Richard Garfield. I'll just say it. Richard Garfield is the designer of Magic the Gathering, the original designer of Magic the Gathering. And he also designed King of Tokyo. More recently, he designed Bunny Kingdom. Let me see if I'm missing any core games. But I think even if he hadn't designed any of those games, I think he had to be on the list for Magic the Gathering, even though that kind of goes against some of my categories here. But just because of the scope, the epic scope of Magic the Gathering, a lot of which has not come necessarily from him. There are many other designers who have designed sets of Magic the Gathering. Mark Rosewater deserves full credit for taking Magic to the next level. But I got to give Richard Garfield credit for starting it. So here he designed Robo Rally, Netrunner. Let's see, Star Wars trading card game, which I played a long time ago. King of Tokyo, King of New York, Bunny Kingdom. Yeah, so he would maybe be on the edge of my categories, but Magic just pushes him over that edge. Incredible designer, Richard Garfield. So those are the guys that I consider. Unfortunately, I say guys. Unfortunately, they are all men. Which I didn't do that on purpose. It's a little unfortunate, but hopefully that changes. That kind of stopped me in the tracks there a second, because I realized that they are all guys. But I guess I didn't take gender into account when I made this list. These are the top 10 Hall of Fame game designers right now, in my opinion, and my favorite games from them. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have a favorite game from any of the people that I mentioned in this video, or if you have a list that you would consider, if you were given the power to create a Hall of Fame, not just for yourself, but for the entire tabletop game world, if you were the person to select 10 nominees for that list, who would you put on that list, and how would you? What are your guidelines for putting them on the list? You can use my guidelines or create your own. This is a completely made up thing. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you next week with another Sunday Sit Down. Take care.